Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member Meeks. Welcome, Secretary Rubio. I want to take a moment to echo the sentiment about this administration. Under your leadership, we are going backwards. We're losing our moral standing. We're alienating our allies. Our status as the indispensable nation is in question. I had hoped that President Trump would have used you more. I had hoped he would have used diplomatic tools more instead of family deal makers. A prime example of where we have lost ground is the destruction of USAID and the U.S. foreign assistance apparatus. Secretary Rubio, I agree with your stated intention to spend foreign aid effectively, efficiently, and aligned with American values. Your written testimony certainly paints a rosy picture of the State Department's progress in achieving those goals. I quote you when you say, every dollar we spend today is 100 times more effective, efficient, and aligned with the American interest than it was when President Trump took office. We know such huckstering is not the reality. Last year, a new and untested organization called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was set up by Israel and the United States within a few short months to take over distribution of emergency food assistance amid catastrophic food insecurity and famine in Gaza. GHF had no track record of providing humanitarian assistance, and it relied on private subcontractors to transport the food, to provide food distribution sites, and then you saw the reporting. Hundreds of Palestinians, including women and children, were killed just trying to get to those sites. Secretary Rubio, can you tell us, can you tell the world how many people were killed simply trying to access those sites?
Well, since Hamas killed them, you should ask what Hamas's role was.
IDF soldiers shot some of them.
No.
Yes.
Let me tell you the reason why
Rubio,
food wasn't going in there is because the convoys were being hijacked by Hamas.
I reclaim my time because propaganda ain't going to work with me.
Well, it isn't going to work with me either, and what you're saying is propaganda.
Nearly 1,400 people were killed, and that was as of last March. Secretary Rubio, why did the State Department approve the $30 million to GHF at a time when other well-tested agencies were there and able to provide distribution?
Well, because one of those were in cahoots with Hamas. And we saw an incredible amount of the aid flow into Hamas's hands.
Reclaiming my time, the aid was held up at the border by Israel, and you know it.
You guys got to fix your rules here. You can't even answer a question.
You're not following the rules. You're very familiar with how this works.
No, I don't. I never served in the House. This is a weird rule. Will you ask a question and I can't answer?
Would you please add time to the clock?
Nope.
He's a comedy show over there.
I'd say on the left.
This is serious stuff.
I agree. That's why I shouldn't have to answer a question about shoes.
Mr. Rubio, according to public reporting, 9 counterterrorism and anti-fraud safeguards were waived to approve this. I wonder who specifically made the decision. I wonder, were you aware of this decision? I'm not asking you a question. And was there any written justification? I don't want an answer. You know why? Because now GHF is closed. It was abysmal. It was a legacy of disaster. Nothing about our investment, our taxpayers' investment seems to have been effective or efficient or in the interest of the American people. I would call that waste, fraud, and abuse. Moving on, I'm a member of the Appropriations Committee. I'm concerned that you're flouting Congress's constitutional power of the purse when it comes to foreign aid. For FY25, Congress appropriated and the President signed into law more than $690 million for international basic education. I don't need to tell you that investing in basic education is critical for empowering children, creating economic opportunity. It's also had a long-time bipartisan support. You personally, as a senator, supported authorizing legislation, the READ Act. How much of this funding has been spent so far?
I don't have that figure in front of me, but I can tell you we're not going to fund puppet shows.
Can you get it for us?
Yeah, I'll get it for you, but I'm going to tell you the number of puppet shows and all these other stupid things they were spending money on is going to be zero.
Well, you supported the legislation.
I didn't support the legislation to have puppet shows.
Mr. Rubio, Mr. Secretary, the Trump administration will be remembered for rubble and rot. I had hoped you would have been able to distinguish yourself above that rot. I bet you hoped it too. Sadly, you have not. I yield back.
Well, this goes right to the criticisms that I keep hearing from that side over there about us not spending the money because we got rid of a USAID program. USAID basically was a program, was a system that was completely devoid of our public policy. It operated almost as an independent State Department, and oftentimes USAID was operating in contravention and contradiction of what the embassy was trying to accomplish in the host country. And one of the complaints you would get from many developing countries is that they would get flooded with NGOs that were picked for them. These NGOs would then operate in the country without even coordinating with the government, doing whatever they wanted and pursuing what they wanted. And in some cases, it extended well beyond food and medicine. It extended to political interference and all sorts of other activities in these countries that were undermining the national interest and the credibility of the United States. Now, these compacts in particular are promising and exciting because they are government-to-government arrangements. No longer do we put money into a bucket and says, this is for vaccines, or this is for medical care, or this is for standing up clinics globally. We are doing it individually, country by country. And the reason why that makes sense is because every country has unique needs. Some country may need more help in some area than in others. But at the core of this arrangement that we're making with countries is their desire and our goal to ultimately help them build their own national health systems so that eventually they no longer are dependent on foreign aid in order to be able to conduct that. Some countries it may take 5 years, some countries it may take 15. It depends on which country. But that's the goal of the compact. And these countries are happy with the compact because for the first time ever, their government leaders have control over how the money is spent, where it's being spent, and it's being spent in a way that builds their domestic capacity inside of the country. That's a much better way to do it than to flood these countries with NGOs accountable to nobody, run by, in many cases, through a USAID program that was undermining our foreign policy in that country in many instances.
Some Democrats are making the laughable claim that Iran is stronger today than they were before Epic Fury started because of the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. You've seen the Trump derangement syndrome in the hearing today. Can you set the record straight on whether or not Iran is stronger today?
Well, they have no Navy, they have no Air Force, they have no air defenses, they have they have massive destruction to the defense industrial base. They've lost a substantial percentage of their missile launchers and of their drone launchers as well. They're not benefiting from the straits being closed because the blockade is keeping them from hundreds of millions of dollars a day in revenue. They've had their ships seized in the Indo-Pacific. Their leadership is fractured. They have hyperinflation. Their currency is worthless, and they're having trouble making payroll. I guess other than that, they're doing well.
Thank you. Do you believe that keeping the credible threat of kinetic military force on the table and the president's willingness to use such force is important to your diplomatic leverage?
Yes, because unfortunately we are dealing with a group of people that don't understand anything but that.
And so the resolution that's on the floor in the U.S. House this week would do what to the U.S. leverage?
I don't think technically it does anything. I think perceptionally it allows the Iranians to believe that somehow they don't have to make a deal because there's no threat of something bad happening to them if they don't.
And just as a follow-up to my friend Congressman Schneider's line of questioning, can you describe the key differences between the terms of the deal that you all are negotiating with Iran today versus the terms of the JCPOA?
What we're discussing now is what the negotiations will be about. And it will be about no enrichment, what they're going to do with their enrichment, and what they're going to do with the highly enriched uranium being removed and being disposed of. That wasn't a part of JCPOA. The other thing is the JCPOA was time limited. In fact, the prohibition on certain enrichment would have been expiring this very year. This very year would have been expiring, so JCPOA right now would be expiring and they would be able to be in a position to then ramp up and do whatever they wanted in compliance with the JCPOA. So there are major differences even in the text of what we're discussing the negotiations are going to be about. But ultimately, any deal we do will be a good deal or it won't be a deal. And it'll be better than JCPOA.
Absolutely, and I think that's a key point is that this idea that you could draw any analogy between what's happening now, where the administration has totally obliterated the nuclear capabilities of Iran, plus their conventional capabilities, You're negotiating from a position of strength that the Obama and Biden administration was not negotiating from a position of strength at all, and provided upfront sanctions. We know what the result was. I want to shift to the Indo-Pacific real quick. As you know, the Taiwan Relations Act states that it is the policy of the United States to provide Taiwan with arms of a defensive character. Consistent with that policy, the Trump administration announced in December of 25 an $11 billion arms package for Taiwan, the largest ever, including HIMARS, howitzers, drones, Javelin anti-tank missiles. As a result, the Taiwan legislature passed a $25 billion special defense budget that included funding for an even bigger arms deal for air and missile defense totaling $14 billion, a deal that is not final and a deal that is under review. As you know, one of the 6 assurances states that the U.S. will not consult with the PRC on arms sales to Taiwan. Now, you've heard this. Critics of the administration have alleged, the media has alleged, as a result of the Beijing summit, that President Trump's recent meetings with Chinese leader Xi in Beijing not only paused Taiwan arms sales, that's their term, paused arms sales, but also violated the assurance that the U.S. will not consult with the PRC directly. Can you clear the air on this?
First of all, the $11 million in December was the single largest arms sales ever to Taiwan. It was more than happened cumulatively under 4 years of President Biden. And in fact, I recall that for 6 years, President Obama offered zero to Taiwan during his presidency. So it was such a big deal, by the way, that the Chinese reacted to it with really hyper activity in terms of military exercises around Taiwan. We don't consult with the Chinese on these arms sales. We're aware of their position. They talk about it all the time, and I don't need to tell you, it wouldn't be breaking news that they're not in favor of these arms sales. They raise it, but they are not negotiated, and they're not consulted. That second deal, the $14 million one, that's currently under review. And that would not be unusual for something
So that's not a pause. That's not a pause. That's under review, and we've already done an $11 billion deal.
Just did one in December.
Right. So I think the mischaracterization of this as a pause doesn't reflect the administration's commitment that they've already made on the $11 billion deal. I yield back.
Yeah, correct.